BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, the views, the analysis you need for our beautiful game. It's Tuesday the 11th of February. I'm Phil Goodlad, and it was penalties and Paisley as Hearts book their Scottish Cup quarter-final spot.
It's James Penrice to send Hearts through, and he's done it! James Penrice with the winning penalty after the heroics of Craig Gordon in the penalty shootout.
A boost for Celtic. Daizan Maida cleared to play against Bayern Munich.
Here's Luke McCowan, left-hand side of the penalty, and in the back post, Maida hat-trick!
And the fallout continues at Rangers after that shock defeat to Queen's Park.
Corner comes in from the right-hand side into the near post, headed away. Tavernier Drost controls it on the left foot, goes back right. Can he pick it? A teammate, he's rolled in the bottom corner! Queen's Park have a sensational lead at Ibrox!
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Delighted to say I'm joined by Ian Murray, who knows a thing or two about cup shocks, cup success and Rangers after his spell at the club. Ian, morning to you.
Good morning.
And John Walker, who knows a thing or two about all that from a tactical point of view, and he can shine his tactical genius on what's happening across the Scottish Cup. And we may even ask him about what's happening at Ibrox as well. John, good morning.
Morning, Phil.
Quick highlight from you both of the Scottish Cup fifth round, and you can't say Ibrox. Ian, you were down at Ayr. Where else were you over the Cup weekend?
That was it. Travelled down to Ayr on Friday evening. I really enjoyed the game, actually. I was glad somebody scored, though, in the end as well. The collective five relief all round that gantry, that's for sure. But yeah, it was a really, really good, tight Scottish Cup tie under the lights, obviously, an old-fashioned ground, and United give very good account of themselves, but ultimately, as happens in most cases, the Premier League team got through in the end.
I know this probably isn't the most manly question of a morning for you, but just how cold was it on Friday night?
It was pretty cold. It was pretty cold. Thankfully, we had a heater that was keeping us good. But like I say, yeah, delighted somebody scored. Yeah. I was dreading it was an equaliser, but gave it a good bash and nearly scored at the end.
I know. I mean, I've said this so many times that people are probably bored of it, but see if the aliens were to ever come to Earth and they were to go to Somerset Park on a Friday night at the start of February, they would just jump in their spacecraft and disappear, because why would they try and conquer a planet that is so bonkers? John, what about you? Where were you over the Scottish Cup ties?
I was at Ibrox, so probably Callum.
I said we can't mention Ibrox at this stage.
So let's go with a different penalty then. If we're not going with Callum Ferry's save, I'm quite obsessed with James Wilson and the career that kid might have. So I quite liked seeing him step up first and take the first penalty in a penalty shootout in a high pressure situation and tuck it away confidently in the top corner.
Yeah. I'll tell you what was a real nuisance last night was, given that I work on Good Morning Scotland, you have to be in bed for a certain time to get up for 4 o'clock in the morning. And see, when Hearts scored their equaliser last night, I could say one or two naughty words. Because just like you, Ian, I was looking for a victory at 90 minutes, and that would be us. But no, they did well. And listen, I know, see if your team loses on a penalty shootout, it is the worst thing in the world. See if you're a neutral, penalty shootouts are the way to finish a game. So, as ever, plenty to get through with the draw. It's the quarter-final stage we're at, of course, and it sees the last 8 teams really sided together in a way that I think probably is one that we can all get into. I mean, the tie of the round, obviously, and we'll start at Parkhead, and is Celtic against your old side Hibs. But that's a tie that I think if you're a neutral and you look at that, I mean, Celtic will be favourites because they're favourites when they play anybody in Scottish football at the moment. But yet, if you were to pick one team to maybe go and spring something at Celtic Park, it may just be Hibs.
Yeah, it's a tough draw for Hibs. We can't shy away from it. It's not the draw that all the teams in that that hat were not wanting Celtic at Parkhead. That's for sure. But I'm a firm believer you're going to have to beat Celtic to win this cup. That's for sure, because they're so dominant at the moment. And you're right, it's probably, Hibs are the form team out with Celtic over the last sort of 2 to 3 months. Last time they went there, they ended in defeat, but they had plenty of chances that day. They should have scored a couple of goals, and that could have been a different story. It's a cup competition, anything can happen, but there's no doubt Celtic are so strong at the moment. I had a wee laugh when I was watching the game last night, and everybody jumping about at the end and all, and the Hibs fans on Friday night, and I'm thinking, oh well, you've got to play Celtic still, so enjoy this moment when you can, guys.
and take me into the mindset of somebody that's been in that situation, Ian. That Celtic would have been the team to avoid. Will Hibs players be feeling disappointed that they've drawn them in the last 8? I know if they're going to win the cup, they're probably going to have to beat them, but you would want to avoid them until the final, would you not?
Yeah, you want them in the final, because it's a one-off. You never know, 50-50 split, neutral venue. At least before that, before the semi-final, you'd want them at home, that's for sure. I think probably deep down, the Hibs boys will not have liked what they saw last night. But then I think it changes pretty quickly. Your mindset changes, because you always believe in yourself, you always believe in your team and your teammates that you can go and win the game. You never go into a game thinking you're going to lose, certainly from my experience. But again, we can't shy away from it. It's a draw that nobody wanted. Celtic at Parkhead, especially when you're close to getting to a semi-final, which is a good occasion as well. But look, somebody had to get them. Unfortunately, this season it was Hibs, but Hibs will go there full of belief, and I know there's a little bit in between now and that fixture, but there's no reason why the confidence from the Hibs players and supporters, I guess, they'll get a bigger allocation than normal than they do for the league, for the Scottish Cup. So the Hibs will go there full of hope, full of confidence, but ultimately we have to be realistic and say this is a very, very hard draw.
Queen's Park will go up to Pittodrie, John Walker, and think, well, this will be much easier as the last round, will it not be?
I think they'll be well set and confident in that, because I do think they were actually pretty good against Rangers, to be honest. I do think sometimes it can be quite easy to restrict the way Rangers play, especially if you're well organised, well drilled. I think Aberdeen might have a few more tools in their arsenal and are a wee bit better coached. That's my first dig in at Rangers right there. And the way that they can go about kind of overcoming Queen's Park in a low block. But yeah, I think Aberdeen's a different animal, and you often see teams that kind of create these cup shocks. They don't often follow them up, to be fair. But yeah, there's no taking that Ibrox victory away from them.
Yeah, and we will get to that in just a moment with your tactical eye on that. Hearts, Dundee, Livingston, St Johnstone. The one thing that the draw threw up for me, Ian, that I was almost disappointed with, was that Livingston and Queen's Park weren't paired together, which meant that we would have had one lower league side in the semi-finals, guaranteed.
Yeah, it's probably the draw both teams wanted, to be honest. Livingston are probably looking at who was left, obviously Queen's Park, but Livingston at home. I've watched a lot of Livingston this season, actually. I've seen them quite a lot, and they're a very, very hard team to beat. They're not always, brilliant, but they've got a really good knack of. David knows how to set up a team. There's no question about that. He knows how to win games. He knows how to win these sort of cup ties. He's done it so many times, and he's doing it again now in the Championship against teams. So I think it's quite an interesting game, because both teams will look at that one and really, really fancy it. It could. I know St Johnstone are at the bottom of the league and Livingston are in the Championship, but it could be a really, really interesting game, that. And Livingston will fancy their chances of getting to Hampden for a semi-final, as will St Johnstone. But yeah, it's a shame that we don't know for certain if we're going to have a Championship team in the semi-final, because I always think these things are really, really good. And just to touch on the Rangers, I think it was needed, to be honest. I think that Queen's Park result was needed for the Scottish Cup in general. I think over the last couple of years, it's got a little bit mundane. It's got a little bit the same. It's always the same teams that are getting through, and there's not that many shocks now. So Queen's Park deserve a lot of credit.
Well, let's get into it then, because this is, what are we, day 2 now of the aftermath, and the aftermath could continue at Rangers long into the week. I mean, one of the back pages this morning suggesting that it would take £1.2 million of a payoff for Rangers to pay off Philippe Clement if they decide to get rid of him, although all the indications are that they won't at this stage. John, focus primarily first on the tactics and where you saw Queen's Park stifle Rangers. We always hear about the low block, and I'm sometimes loath to speak about such a term because I think a low block sounds quite demeaning to the team that employ it, because it almost just, I mean, it's just a fancy way of saying, well, we're just going to sit off the ball and let them come on. But that's not what a low block is.
No. I think it's just deep defending. It's just deep defending and making sure you get the opportunities to step up. I think Queen's Park actually watched the first half and kind of just wanted to get through it, in truth. And they were very deep in the first half. In the second half, they probably raised the line by about 15, 20 yards. When Rangers had goal kicks and it was back at Liam Kelly, they did try and get two up against our centre-halves to make sure the build wasn't quite as easy. And I think that kind of unsettled Rangers a little bit. But I think anyone that watched the opening 15 minutes kind of seen that Queen's Park were very comfortable. My concern with Rangers, and it's something if you watch Celtic, you'll never see Kuhn do. Kuhn will stay on the touchline. Kuhn will stay on the right wing. He'll stay high against his fullback, waiting for his teammates to create a 1v1. Whatever system that's against, people seem to think you can't do it against a team that are deep defending or a team that are low block or a team that are back five. You will get 1v1s if you're patient enough and your players build enough. What Rangers have is it's either no structure or it's impatient and panicked players, because I think there was about 7 or 8 times in the first half alone that Czerny was on the ball with 11 players of Queen's Park in front of him. He's dropping that deep where he's picking up his head and there's 11 players. I think Hamza Igeman had a shot just before half time that was the exact same scenario. Your number 9, your centre forward, is dropping to get the ball off Robin Proper and taking a shot for 35 yards with the full Queen's Park team in front of you. It's either impatient, it's either uncoached, or it's worse, it's both. And that's my concern, is that players you don't need to be positionally strict on where your players are, but if teams are going to do that, you need to stretch the pitch as much as possible. And I think Bailey Rice is getting a hard time, because anytime he get the ball, there's either Czerny's 10 yards in the number 10 position, or there's no pass for him at all and he's having to go back to centre halves. It looks so disjointed and unstructured that it becomes, for Queen's Park, I don't want to diminish anything they did, but it actually becomes kind of easy for teams just to shuffle across the pitch, keep the spacing right, because eventually as the left back, as long as you keep your spacing right and the left winger's tucked in, the ball can't go to Czerny. Czerny's going to go to the ball, Hadji's going to go to the ball, Bezrami's got to go to the ball, and Eggman's going to go to the ball. So you've nothing actually to do except keep your spacing right. Queen's Park defence doesn't need to shift, because Eggman's away 35 yards away from you and nobody's actually occupying that space. It was a well-organised, well-disciplined Queen's Park performance, but I actually think that's kind of, see, if you're doing your coaching badges or if you're coaching a shape session, you're just doing that 101 the whole game against Rangers and making sure you don't leave any gaps in the centre.
Ian, as a former Rangers player, are you surprised at what appears on the pitch at Ibrox on Sunday against a lower league team? Because if I look at the stats, Rangers battered Queen's Park. They just didn't score, because that's what the stats tell us, is shots on target, shots off target. But yet the biggest stat of them all is the number next to the team name for goals. And I get that. But there's been so much outcry and so much focus and so much ridicule. It was the same as when Aberdeen got dumped by Darvel a couple of years ago, that sometimes amid all the pantomime of what's happened, we maybe don't drill down to why it happened or how it happened. And as a former player, can you see how Rangers lost?
Yeah, a bit like John said. I was kind of thinking about it yesterday in terms of Rangers as a whole, not just the game, on Sunday, because they're very, very good in Europe, and then they struggle a wee bit domestically at the moment. And John kind of touched on it there. For me, they're so structured that at times they can be a wee bit predictable. It's like John said, there's no maverick in the team. Someone to unlock a defence, or it seems like they're positionally coached so strictly that they can't leave their position, which works. I know managers that are very much for that But I think sometimes you need some player to go and get the ball and do something with it and do something a little bit different when you're playing against a team like, you're dominating a game and you're struggling away to get through. But I just don't think Rangers at the moment have the players that are really exciting too many people, certainly in the stands at Ibrox. And that tends to be what gets you out of jail in these games a little bit, just someone coming up with something. But Queen's Park I've seen a lot of Queen's Park as well this season. Very, very well coached team. Very, very hard to beat as well. I've seen them in some games get a real doing, and then they come up with a goal. Again, they've got some players that can do it. I think, when you're at a club like Rangers, in particular the Old Firm, the pressure is pretty high. We have to remember, this isn't a non-league team to beat Rangers. This is a championship team. It's not exactly, it's not 11 guys that have been dragged out of a pub on a Sunday morning. These boys are good players, and there's a good manager who's won the Scottish Cup. So it was never going to be that easy. It was probably the tie. I was having a look at the fixtures on Friday night, and I'll be honest, I couldn't see any shocks happening. So I'm not going to proclaim that I saw this coming, but I looked at them all and I thought that was the one. As daft as it sounds and easy as it is to say now, but I looked at the rest of them and I couldn't see too much room for shocks. But I fully expected Rangers to win the game. So it is a blow for them because they lost the League Cup final and then they're quite far behind in the league. And I know everybody will talk about Clement. They've backed him really heavily until now, and if the reports are right about the 1.2 million, people say Rangers don't have the money. Rangers will always find 1.2 million if they really want to. There's somebody out there who will do that. So it'll be an interesting, maybe 7 to 10 days ahead.
Ian, can I ask you a question? And I really don't like the discussion about managers' futures and that, because you were a manager and lots of people spoke about your future as well. But when you were a player, it would have been the same. As a former player and as a former manager, when you see Rangers on Sunday, do you think that a change is required? And is that change in the dugout? Is that change on the pitch? Or was that just a one-off game where, like Aberdeen Darvel, like Hearts a couple of seasons ago against, was it Brora, these things just happen in the Cup?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's never nice to have to talk about managers or players in a negative sense. I think it really, for me, it depends on what direction Rangers want to go. I think it's maybe above the management and coaching staff at the moment. Where are they getting these players from? Everybody likes to talk about Rangers' finances. Nobody really knows where they are. How much do they have to play with, if anything, come the summer? But I think it's Rangers supporters are used to being entertained. They demand to be entertained and they demand to win. So they want both to go hand in hand. At the moment, they're winning most of their games in Europe. They're winning majority of their games domestically, but the entertainment side of it is not really there at the moment. So that's when where are the players, the wingers like John was talking about, as Celtic stretch the game, hug the touchline, try to draw you out a little bit, get 1v1s. Rangers kind of dominate the ball. I mean, I saw Rangers at the start of the season against Dundee in the League Cup, and I actually thought they were pretty good in the counter-attack. I thought they'd done really well, and then after that it kind of dried up a little bit because teams will go and sit in and defend and look to hit them on the counter-attack, and they look really, really fragile at the moment. So I think they've got a lot of thinking to do, not just because of the Queen's Park game. I think they've got a lot of thinking to do towards the summer and possibly the next winter window, because Celtic are just improving all the time. And I know Rangers beat them 3-0 just not that long ago, but that was pretty much a one-off. And Celtic perversely might have needed that, just a wee reminder of what can happen. And Brendan and the players use that as a little bit of fire to say, let's go again.
John, is this a moment that will blow over and that Clement will get back on the European horse and that will inevitably lead to maybe even the latter stages again? They're going into the last 16, or is this the moment that you feel that the end was nigh for this particular style of Rangers. And I'm not speaking about a change of manager, although you may think that's the case. Might it be this particular tactical approach at Ibrox?
It's the Queen's Park result was just the icing in the cake. You're about 95% of fans are out. They don't like the way he answers questions to the fan media, who are the kind of voice of what we get to hear from the manager. He comes off as very arrogant with no charisma, shoots down fair questions as far as I'm concerned. The thing you talked about the shots and goal that he keeps quoting, he allows players and he actually encourages players to take shots from 25, 30 yards. There was a Dundee United game, the 1-1 game. Cherny had 10 shots and goal. 9 of them were outside the box. And not to pull out stats, they were all like less than like a 3% probability of scoring a goal. One of those deflects and goes in, and that's how we got our equaliser. But when he's quoting shots and goal, you need to then look at the quality of chances you're creating, and they're not created. There's shots from 30 yards. There's shots with 5, 6, 7 players in front of the player hitting the shot. We're not building and creating really high quality chances. So the entertainment factor is not there at all. It's the least enjoyable I've ever felt going to Rangers games regularly. It's every time you turn up, you don't really know what you're getting. You might get goals. You might get goals. But I would expect Rangers to score whether they were a creative team playing well, in form, or whatever. I think that the only time it's ever been this way for such a prolonged period was Alex McLeish after like the 4th season, and we know how Alex McLeish was having to run Rangers. He was not given a single penny after the first 2 seasons. But Alex McLeish had 5 trophies in the bank. Alex McLeish went on and actually dragged another title in League Cup out of Rangers. And that's why the fans never really got on Alex McLeish. Celtic had a whitewash one season where they won every Old Firm. But Alex McLeish, we keep saying this, Alex McLeish had proper credit in the bank with Rangers, and Rangers fans loved him. Clement doesn't have that in the bank, so fans are turning up, not enjoying it. The issue with the 1.2 million, as Ian talked about, if they don't find the 1.2 million, I think they're going to be surprised when the 4-week season ticket window opens up and nobody renews in the first 3. That'll scare them, because that's £27-30 million that Rangers rely on.
John Walker, Ian Murray, we're going to have to leave things there, and I'm so sorry because I was wanting to speak about Celtic Bayern Munich tomorrow night. The Germans fly into Glasgow today. There is a special podcast coming out tomorrow on the Champions League tie between Celtic and Bayern. Apologies that we didn't get to it just now, but as I expected would happen, time maybe ran away with us when it came to speaking about the Scottish Cup, and indeed one result that continues to dominate Scottish football. John Walker, Ian Murray, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. The Daily Football Podcast, back with you every day throughout the week. The clue is in the title. Go to BBC Sounds for it there, or click on your notifications and it will drop in your feed when it's released. For now, though, I'm Phil Goodlad. Enjoy the beautiful game, and we'll speak again soon.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer, but then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me?
This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangers Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.